Ed China's departure from Wheeler Dealers shocked fans around the world. For years, he was the calm and knowledgeable mechanic with his bright orange gloves, carefully explaining every detail of a repair while his partner Mike Brewer hunted for bargain cars to restore and sell. Together, they created a unique chemistry that made the show stand out. But suddenly, without any warning, Ed was gone. Viewers who had grown used to his presence were left confused, staring at their screens and wondering what had really happened behind the scenes. The truth wasn't straightforward, and depending on who you asked, the reasons were different. Some people blamed cost-cutting at the Discovery Channel, while others believed there had been a serious clash between Ed and Mike or with the production team. Whatever the reason, it was clear that something had gone badly wrong. When Wheeler Dealers first started in 2003, it was something fresh and new in the world of car television. Back then, YouTube tutorials and online how-to videos weren't a big thing. If you wanted to learn about fixing cars, you either had to know someone who could teach you or figure it out yourself. That's what made Ed so important. His calm, patient way of explaining mechanical problems made people feel like they could actually tackle their own repairs. He showed every step clearly, breaking down complicated jobs into easy-to-understand pieces. At the same time, Mike was the fast-talking car trader who brought energy, humor, and deals to the show. Together, they were like opposites that balanced each other perfectly. Mike made people laugh and kept the business side moving, while Ed made sure the heart of the show was the actual work in the garage. Fans loved that combination. Letters and emails poured in from around the world, with people saying how much they learned from Ed's demonstrations. Some said they had fixed their own cars for the first time thanks to his guidance. Parents and kids would watch together, with children copying the way Ed labeled bolts or carefully loosened parts. It wasn't just about entertainment, it was about teaching real skills in a way that made viewers feel confident and included. By the time the show reached its 5th season, it was being broadcast in over 100 countries. That kind of global reach proved how special the format was. The show kept growing, and eventually, the team even moved their base to California in order to capture the huge American car market. Sunlight, palm trees, and a wide variety of cars gave the series a whole new vibe, but the heart of it still came back to Ed's hands-on teaching style. But things started to change. Behind the cameras, the production became more complex, and budgets were tightened. There were whispers that the network wanted to cut back on the time spent showing repairs. To many fans, those moments were the best part of the program, the reason they tuned in week after week. Ed himself later suggested that the detailed repair segments were being reduced to save money. Instead of full explanations, there were quick cuts and montages, which frustrated both him and the viewers who wanted to keep learning. Ed was passionate about giving the audience a proper understanding of the work, and he wasn't willing to compromise on that. When he realized the format was changing in a way that didn't match his values, the tension grew stronger. Eventually, things reached a breaking point. Ed left the show suddenly, without even an on-screen goodbye. For fans, it felt like a missing chapter. There was no final handshake with Mike, no last project to close the story. It was just silence. That silence fueled rumors. Some believed Ed and Mike had fallen out, though both men gave interviews denying it. Others thought Discovery Channel's cuts had forced Ed's hand, making it impossible for him to continue. Whatever the real reason, the partnership that had defined Wheeler Dealers was over, and the show would never feel the same again. Ed's departure didn't mean he disappeared from the public eye. Fans followed him online, eager for updates, and many continued to support him in his new ventures. His reputation as a skilled mechanic and an approachable teacher stayed intact. In fact, his leaving only proved how much of the show's soul had depended on him. Wheeler Dealers continued without him, with a new mechanic stepping in, but a lot of viewers felt the magic had gone. They missed the slow, detailed explanations and the unique way Ed made everything look possible for ordinary people at home. Looking back, it's easy to see why Ed's role mattered so much. Car shows often focus on speed, drama, or flashy results. Wheeler Dealers had all of that, but it also had something deeper, a genuine love of teaching and sharing knowledge. That was Ed's gift. He didn't just repair cars, he gave viewers the courage to try it themselves. For many fans, that's what made the show feel personal. Losing that element felt like losing the heart of the program. Even today, people talk about his time on Wheeler Dealers with a mix of nostalgia and respect. Clips of his work still circulate online, inspiring a new generation of car enthusiasts. The bright orange gloves became a symbol of patience, clarity, and skill. No matter how many new episodes the show produces, those early years with Ed and Mike remain the golden era for millions of fans. The suddenness of his departure only adds to the mystery and the sense of something unfinished. It leaves people wondering whether one day the story could come full circle, and whether Ed might ever return, even for a special episode. The truth about why he left may never be completely clear. Maybe it was money, maybe it was creative differences, maybe it was a mix of many things. What's certain is that his decision changed the show forever. The workshop doors closed behind him, leaving fans with memories of every careful explanation, every patient step, and every car that went from wreck to wonder under his guidance. That's the legacy Ed China left on Wheeler Dealers, not just a string of fixed cars, but a generation of people who learned that with the right tools, time, and a little patience, they could do it too. When the show first moved to California, it looked like the beginning of a new golden age for Wheeler Dealers. The workshop was enormous, with space for multiple cars, shiny new lifts, and more tools than most mechanics could ever dream of. They suddenly had access to American classics, Mustangs, DeLoreans, Camaros, that excited fans around the world. The parts budget was generous, and the cars they featured were bigger, flashier, and more diverse than ever before. From the outside, it looked like everything was going perfectly. The boys were juggling multiple projects, juggling sponsorships, and cranking out episodes on tight schedules, and for a while, everything they touched turned into a hit. The show seemed unstoppable. But behind the polished image, the pressure was building. The move to California had not just increased the size of the workshop, it had also raised the stakes in ways they hadn't faced before. The new network, Velocity, wanted content faster. Episodes that once took their time to unfold now had to be churned out quickly. Shooting days started before sunrise, and the crew often pushed until late in the evening. Cars had to be filmed, restored, and sold in record time. Meals were takeout boxes stacked by the workshop door. The dream setup came with rules that slowly drained away the soul of the show. For Ed China, this shift was the hardest to swallow. What made him unique was his teaching style. He loved slowing things down, showing every bolt being removed, explaining why a repair mattered, and making sure viewers at home could follow along. But under the new production style, those detailed lessons were being cut down to seconds. A brake job that used to fill 10 minutes on screen now flashed by in 30. A complete engine rebuild might be reduced to just a handful of quick clips and a voiceover. For Ed, this was like ripping pages out of his textbook. The heart of the show, the learning, was being stripped away. Ed tried to push back. He pleaded for more screen time to show repairs properly. He stayed late at the shop, filming close-up shots in the hope that editors would include them in the final cut. Many of those moments never made it on air. The producers had their own stopwatch-driven vision, one that prioritized speed over substance. Mike Brewer, ever the hustler and negotiator, tried to balance both sides. He shook hands with sponsors, reassured producers, and then checked on Ed, but the gap between what the show once was and what it was becoming only grew wider. On camera, they still laughed and joked, keeping up the chemistry fans loved. But off camera, the smiles were thinner. Viewers began to notice. Online forums and fan groups filled with complaints. People asked why the show felt so rushed. Where was the detail they loved? Fans from Brazil to Birmingham said the same thing, they couldn't follow along at home anymore. The builds were quicker, shinier, but they had lost the slow, careful teaching that made Wheeler Dealers more than just another car show. Ratings were still strong, but the soul of the program was drifting away. Ed felt it most of all. Night after night, he worked late, trying to salvage the spirit of the show by filming extra content. But lesson after lesson ended up cut from the episodes. He was left watching the work he cared about most tossed onto the editing room floor. The pressure was building like steam in a kettle, and everyone sensed it was only a matter of time before something gave. That breaking point finally came in March 2017. Without warning, a video appeared on Ed China's personal YouTube channel. It was just 6 minutes long, titled simply, "I'm leaving Wheeler Dealers." It wasn't clickbait. It wasn't a teaser for a new project. It was Ed, sitting at a plain desk, wearing his trademark orange gloves, looking directly into the camera with steady eyes. He spoke slowly, carefully, making sure every word landed with clarity. Fans who clicked the video expected some kind of reassurance, maybe even a clever twist. Instead, what they heard was Ed explaining, in the calm and honest way he always had, that he was stepping away from the show. He didn't rant, and he didn't blame anyone directly. He explained that the changes being forced into Wheeler Dealers meant there was less time to show the actual repairs. To him, that was unacceptable, because it stripped away the very reason he loved doing the program in the first place. He wanted viewers to learn, to be able to take the knowledge from the show and use it on their own driveways. Without that, it wasn't the same show anymore. For millions of fans, watching that video was a gut punch. The man who had taught them how to change brake pads, rebuild engines, and bring rusty cars back to life was walking away. Social media exploded with reactions, shock, anger, sadness, and respect. Many sided with Ed, saying they too had felt the changes and missed the slower, more detailed style. Others wondered what would happen to Wheeler Dealers without him. For many people, Ed was the show. His presence had turned it from light entertainment into something practical and inspiring. Mike Brewer later tried to calm the storm, assuring viewers that the show would continue, but the damage was already done. The partnership that had carried Wheeler Dealers from its humble beginnings to a global hit was broken. Fans knew that whatever came next, it would not feel the same. Ed's 6-minute video became one of the most talked about moments in car TV history. It was simple, honest, and final. Ed's farewell video might have been calm and polite on the surface, but its impact was explosive. He said the new bosses wanted to shorten the repair scenes in the name of efficiency, but he didn't agree. In his view, a car show without proper repairs wasn't really a car show at all. So instead of staying and compromising, he chose to walk away. He thanked the fans, gave kind words to Mike, and even wished the network well. Still, when he quietly admitted, "It's not the direction I can support," the sting was obvious. Fans didn't just hear his words, they heard what he meant. The very heart of Wheeler Dealers was being cut out. The internet reacted instantly. Within minutes, the video spread across forums, Facebook groups, and car blogs. Viewers clipped quotes, circled screenshots, and searched for hidden clues in his delivery. Some praised Ed for standing firm and refusing to water down his craft. Others turned their attention to Mike, asking why he hadn't fought harder to save the detailed repair segments. The video's view count shot up like a revving tachometer, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. By lunchtime, auto news sites were covering it. By dinner, it was trending on Twitter. Ed had only meant to explain himself, but what he uploaded shook the car community worldwide. Reporters rushed for statements. Ed stayed calm, repeating that he had no regrets about leaving. The network put out a short press release insisting Wheeler Dealers was still strong, but the words sounded hollow. Mike, caught in the middle, tried to defend both the show and his friendship with Ed. But the internet wasn't in a forgiving mood, and the storm turned its full force on him. The backlash hit Mike Brewer hard, like a brick through a windscreen. Within hours of Ed's video, angry posts stacked up across every platform. Some fans accused him of being a sellout who let the producers strip away the soul of the show. Others went far beyond criticism, hurling ugly insults and even threats. Mike tweeted that he loved Ed like a brother and had begged the network to keep the long repair segments, but the flood of hate didn't slow. Soon, the anger spilled out of the digital world and into Mike's personal life. His inbox filled with hate mail. One message threatened to show up at his house. Another dragged his teenage daughter into the mess. The abuse shook him so badly that he phoned the police. They opened a file, warned him to be careful, and told him to watch his back. Later, Mike admitted that the strain nearly broke him. Even Ed stepped back into the fray, posting that no one should be threatening Mike and asking fans to calm down. But the internet is a wildfire, and once it catches, it spreads fast. What had started as disappointment over the end of an era turned into something darker. Sponsors noticed the chaos, and one tire brand even pulled a planned ad spot. What was supposed to be a smooth handover to a new format instead spiraled into a scandal. The fallout revealed just how much the audience cared about Wheeler Dealers, not just as a car show, but as something personal. For fans, Ed wasn't just a TV mechanic, he was a teacher who had been in their living rooms for years, showing them how to fix things with their own hands. To lose him felt like a betrayal, and many decided someone had to blame. Unfortunately, that blame landed squarely on Mike's shoulders, even if the reality was more complicated. When Ed China walked away from Wheeler Dealers, the shock waves were huge. Fans were divided, the internet was ablaze, and Mike Brewer was caught in the middle of a storm he never expected. The network, trying to calm the fire, issued a longer press note. They promised the show would evolve while staying true to its roots. At the same time, they announced a new face to take over Ed's place in the workshop, Ant Anstead, a former police officer turned custom car builder with a big grin, quick wit, and even quicker hands. Some fans were open-minded. They said fresh energy might be good for the series and wanted to give Ant a chance. Others reacted with outrage, calling Ed irreplaceable and swearing they would never watch again. Even in the loudest arguments online, though, people kept glancing back at Mike and Ed, secretly hoping the old duo might someday reunite. But for the moment, the split was final. Mike had to push forward with a new partner, while Ant braced himself for a spotlight sharper than he'd ever faced before. The cameras kept rolling. Ant Anstead walked into the workshop with confidence and humor. His energy was contagious. He had the cheeky charm producers hoped would win over viewers, and he could pull apart a gearbox almost as quickly as he cracked a joke. His first big test came with a bright blue Mustang. In front of the cameras, he dove straight in, pulling it apart, replacing a gearbox in record time, and finishing the job with a quick spray of paint that looked effortless. Viewers who loved action and speed were thrilled. For them, Ant was exciting and fresh, a mechanic who made car builds look like a rock concert. But not everyone was convinced. The old guard, the fans who had followed every bolt and gasket with Ed, weren't happy. They wanted the careful step-by-step explanations. They wanted time to pause the show and copy what they saw. Ant's style didn't give them that. "Where's the walkthrough?" fans asked in comment sections. "How did he line up that clutch? What did he torque those bolts to?" The producers had promised change, and Ant delivered speed and energy, but the detailed lessons, the heart of what Ed brought, were still trimmed down. Ant tried to find a middle ground. Between takes, he filmed extra side clips, slowing things down and explaining tricky steps in more detail. Some of those clips made it onto YouTube, where grateful fans praised him for the effort. But most of his work stayed locked on a hard drive, cut from the final episodes in favor of faster pacing. The ratings held steady, proof that the show could survive. But survival wasn't the same as winning back the fans who had once felt Wheeler Dealers was their show, a place where they could learn as much as they laughed. Mike Brewer worked hard to support Ant and keep the chemistry alive. He praised his new partner's skills, teased bigger projects, and promised deeper dives into the builds. Still, every time he posted online, the comments were filled with the same message: bring back Ed. No matter how good Ant was, the shadow of Ed China hung over every episode. Ant himself had a sense of humor about it. He once joked that he was the most loved and hated mechanic on television at the same time. But off camera, the weight was real. The pressure of trying to live up to Ed's legacy, while also carving out his own space, was heavy, like a V8 engine resting on a flimsy workbench. He kept going, though. The show rolled on with one car after another, a classic Datsun 240Z, a dusty Ferrari, even a military Humvee. Each was restored, flipped, and sold for a profit. On paper, Wheeler Dealers was still a success. But the question lingered: Could it ever feel the same again? For many, the answer was no. The magic of the Mike and Ed partnership was gone, replaced by something faster, slicker, and more polished, but missing the quiet detail that had once set the series apart. While Brewer and Ant chased the next deal under California's bright lights, Ed slipped quietly out of the spotlight. He retreated to a small workshop tucked away in the English countryside. Fans wondered what he was up to, whether he would launch a new show, or maybe return to YouTube to share more of his trademark lessons. For now, though, he seemed content to step back, away from the noise of sponsors, cameras, and deadlines, and return to the simple joy that had always mattered most to him, fixing cars, carefully, one bolt at a time. After Ed left Wheeler Dealers, he kept a low profile. For nearly 4 years, the tall man in orange gloves stayed mostly silent, showing up only at the occasional car show, charity run, or engineering talk. Fans constantly asked the same question: where did he go? They missed his calm voice, his patient teaching, and his ability to make even the trickiest repair feel possible. Finally, in 2021, they got their answer. Ed returned, not on television, but on his own terms. He launched a YouTube series called Ed China's Workshop Diaries. The first episode dropped quietly on a Friday evening. There were no flashy TV-style graphics, no polished studio set, just Ed in a simple workshop, a kettle whistling in the background, and an old Range Rover waiting for attention. He greeted viewers like old friends, rolled up his sleeves, and got straight to work. Every step was shown in real time. Every bolt was removed carefully, every worn seal received a clear close-up. When something needed extra explaining, Ed paused, picked up a marker, and drew simple sketches on a whiteboard. It felt like Wheeler Dealers in its earliest days, only slower, deeper, and entirely under Ed's control. The projects quickly grew beyond ordinary repairs. One week, Ed was bringing a tired 1960s milk float back to life with an electric motor swap. Another week, he revived the record-breaking motorized sofa that had once zoomed through London streets. Viewers were delighted. Comments poured in, full of gratitude. "Finally, I can see the whole job again. This is why I loved you on Wheeler Dealers." By the time the channel hit its 10th video, it had already passed 500,000 subscribers. The support came from YouTube ads, Patreon backers, and fans buying his cheeky big hands, small garage t-shirts. Because there were no network executives breathing down his neck, Ed worked at his own pace. Some months he released a video every Friday. Other times, he disappeared for weeks, hunting rare parts or attending engineering fairs. Nobody complained, they knew the next upload would arrive only when the project was ready. Sponsors reached out, but Ed was picky. He only agreed to feature tools he genuinely used. "If it's not in my toolbox, it's not in the show," he joked. The authenticity was what kept fans loyal. Meanwhile, back in the world of Wheeler Dealers, changes kept coming. Ant Anstead, who had stepped in after Ed's departure, finished his run in 2020 when he moved back to the UK to be closer to his family. The network then brought in Mark Elvis Priestley, a former McLaren Formula One mechanic. Priestley had sharp technical skills and a relaxed sense of humor. The show shifted back to Britain, filming its 2021 season in a new workshop. Ratings held steady, proving the format was still strong, but longtime viewers continued to compare every cut, every weld, and every repair to Ed's patient walkthroughs. By 2024, the paths of Ed and the show seemed set in stone. Ed had built his own independent world where he could teach without compromise, while Mike Brewer carried on with a faster, slicker television machine. On fan forums, whispers of a reunion never really stopped. Mike fueled the speculation now and then by saying, "Never say never." Ed, for his part, would smile, nod, and then gently change the subject. It seemed both men were content driving separate roads, but the idea of seeing them side by side again kept fans hopeful. Then, as the internet often does, it threw in a twist. In early 2023, a small car blog dropped a single line that sent the fanbase buzzing. Sources say Ed China may guest star in a future Wheeler Dealers special. It was unconfirmed, just a rumor, but it spread quickly. Forums lit up, YouTube channels dissected it, and social media filled with speculation. Was it true? Could Ed really return, even for just one episode? For fans, that possibility felt like the perfect circle, two men who had built a global car phenomenon, taking the wheel together one more time. Whether it ever happens remains uncertain, but if Ed has proven anything, it's that the next chapter in his story always seems to appear just around the bend. The rumors never stopped. They didn't need names or dates, just the faintest spark was enough to ignite pages of speculation. Whole threads stretched for miles, with fans dissecting blurry photos and half-heard tips. Some swore they'd spotted the tall man in orange gloves sharing lunch with a producer at a famous car show. Others insisted the old duo was secretly planning a charity build to celebrate the program's milestone anniversary. Neither man ever fully closed the door. On a podcast, one of them laughed when asked about a reunion. Never say never. My phone still works. A few weeks later, during a live stream from his quiet workshop, someone typed, "Would you ever go back?" The reply came with a grin, "Only if we can show every nut and bolt." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either, and that tiny sliver of hope was enough to keep the fanbase buzzing. The rumor mill kept churning. One story claimed a big broadcaster wanted them for an electric conversion series. Another suggested a global road trip special, 10 classic cars, 10 countries, one final handshake. Most of those whispers collapsed when budgets shrank or calendars clashed, but the chatter never really died. Little hints began to surface. At a massive classic motor show, the two appeared on the same stage for the first time in years. They weren't part of the same panel, but they crossed paths backstage, exchanged a smile, and someone snapped a photo. When it hit social media, fans erupted. A few weeks later, a simple birthday message, "Have a great one, mate. Hope to share a brew soon," was met with a thumbs-up emoji. For longtime viewers, those small gestures felt like fresh oil on a rusty hinge. Away from the whispers, both men kept forging their own paths. One was busy testing hydrogen-powered vehicles, hinting that alternative fuels might become his next great obsession. The other wrapped another season of the show, teasing that they'd just pulled off the biggest profit we've ever made. Yet no matter what projects they announced, every conversation seemed to circle back to the same question, the one fans had never stopped asking. Will you ever team up again? Each man handled the question the same way, shrugs, smiles, and just enough mystery to keep the hope alive. That simple silence, that refusal to say never, became fuel for the fans. As long as the door stayed open even a crack, the dream of a reunion never died, and the endless theories rolled on across forums, videos, and comment sections. Maybe it will happen next year, maybe in 10 years, or maybe never at all. But one truth is certain, the story of the two men who turned a garage show into a global hit isn't finished. It's simply idling, the engine warm, waiting for the next green light. Looking back across more than 2 decades, it's remarkable how a simple show about buying, fixing, and selling cars came to represent something much larger than any engine bay. At its best, it was about honesty. Every scraped knuckle, every seized bolt, and every triumphant test drive felt real because it wasn't hidden behind glossy edits or pushed along by corporate demands. Viewers weren't just watching repairs, they were learning, trying, and failing right alongside the mechanics. That authenticity is what made the victories sweeter, and what gave the show its heartbeat. But the split in 2017 reminded everyone that honesty has a cost. One man chose principles over a steady paycheck, giving up a mainstream TV stage to keep full creative control. The other chose to stay, carrying the burden of keeping an entire crew working and a brand alive for millions of loyal fans. Both decisions required courage. Both came with sleepless nights. And both revealed two truths that don't cancel each other out. Television, by nature, is a team effort built on compromise. Pure craftsmanship, on the other hand, thrives only when there's no stopwatch ticking in the background. The surprising part wasn't that the paths diverged, it was how the audience reacted. Instead of fading away, fans split down 2 roads and followed both. Some stuck with the show, enjoying the thrill of fast flips and glossy new builds. Others turned to slower, more detailed online workshops where every bolt was explained and every process laid bare. In an entertainment world flooded with endless content, this was the lesson: give people real passion, and they will follow you anywhere, no matter the platform. So will the famous handshake ever return? Maybe. History shows that money can bring people back together, but trust often speaks louder. If the day ever comes when the balance feels right, when the cameras can capture both the details and the deals with respect for the craft, those bright workshop lamps might just flicker back on for a reunion. Until then, the two roads continue in parallel. One chases profits on television screens, keeping crews employed and audiences entertained. The other chases perfection in long, unhurried videos, teaching every nut and bolt to those who care enough to watch. That leaves the real question parked in front of the audience. Which path would you choose to follow? Do you tune in for the excitement of quick trades and high-stakes profits, or do you prefer the patient, step-by-step walkthroughs that turn viewers into doers? Or maybe, just maybe, the ultimate dream is to see both approaches merge again into a rare fusion of speed and detail. The next twist in this story may well depend on what fans choose to watch, share, and support. From a small garage in London to stages and studios across the globe, these two men proved that dusty metal and old machines can spark enormous dreams. Their partnership showed how far passion could take a simple idea, and their split showed that passion and profit don't always ride in the same lane. Yet, both roads continue to produce great stories, one told in brisk cuts for television, the other told in long, careful lessons for the internet. Maybe one day those roads will cross again. Or maybe they will remain separate journeys, each valuable in its own way. In the end, it may not be up to them at all. It may come down to you, the fans. Which version of the dream do you want to keep alive? Quick deals and fast profits, detailed guides and deep dives, or some future blend of both? The answer to that question could shape what comes next. What began as a modest show about flipping cars has grown into a story of loyalty, integrity, and choices. It's a reminder that behind every gleaming restoration is hard work, compromise, and vision. And whether together or apart, the legacy is the same, proof that cars are never just machines. They are engines of stories, of passion, and of hope. And like any great build, this one may still have a few surprises left under the hood.